relations, the bilateral ties between Egypt and the African continent, especially as we both share a unified vision regarding the sustainability, coordination and development in the future. But first of all, I will be starting straight away with the main top stories that took place on Sunday, as President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received on Sunday member of the new General Secretariat of the Union of the Arab Journalists, headed by President of the Federation, Muayyad al-Lemi. Presidential spokesman, Councillor Ahmed Fahmy, said that President al-Sisi congratulated the President of the Union of the Arab Journalists and the member of the General Secretariat for their victory in the recent Union elections. Al-Sisi affirmed the Egyptian full support for their work and the important role played by the Union in supporting the Arab press and the reader. For their part, the attendees expressed their honor that the President welcomed them with the new formation of the Secretariat of the Union, noting that their appreciation for development that they are witnessing in Egypt at a very fast pace. The spokesman stated that the meeting witnessed an open dialogue with the President on ways to enhance the vital role of the Arab press, as the President indicated that the press in general and the Arab press in particular are facing new conditions imposed by the spread of the social media on a very large scale, which requires the press to continue modernizing. The meeting also touched on the multiple aspects of the joint Arab action and the challenges facing it, and the unprecedented challenges witnessed by the Arab countries in recent years that threaten the national state itself as a national entity that unites the people and provides them with security, livelihood, and life. The meeting also dealt with the developments in the situation on the Arab and the international arenas, where Minister-President stressed the importance of collective Arab action in dealing with the existing crises and advancing efforts for a peaceful settlement of them in a way that achieves the supreme interests of the Arab peoples and preserves their capabilities, especially at this delicate time that the international system is going through. That was the first piece of news regarding the presidential activities of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. As for the second item for Sunday, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi led on Sunday the military funeral of the Assistant to the President for the National and the Strategic Projects and former Prime Minister Sharif Ismail at Al Mushir Tantawi Mosque in New Cairo. President al-Sisi offered his condolences to the late Ismail's family. The President described Ismail as one of the finest patriotic symbols who left behind the journey full of work and dedication with all sincerity at a critical stage of the homeland's history. President al-Sisi confirmed that this is greatly appreciated by Egypt and its great people. As for the third item of the top stories for the daily debate for tonight and the main presidential activities of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, President al-Sisi received the Romanian Prime Minister Nicolae Ciucă on Sunday. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry attended the meeting together with the Minister of Trade and Industry, Ahmed Samir, as well as the Romanian Minister of Economy and its ambassador to Cairo. Presidential spokesman, Councillor Ahmed Fahmy, stated that President al-Sisi welcomed the visit and sent his greetings to the Romanian President, Klaus Iohannis. President al-Sisi praised the Egyptian historical relations between the two friendly countries. The President expressed his hope to strengthen the bilateral cooperation in light of the positive and the constructive steps taken between the two countries in recent years. For his part, the Romanian Prime Minister conveyed to President Assisi the greetings of the Romanian President, stressing the keenness to continue coordination and consultation between the two friendly countries. And finally, still with the top stories for the daily debate tonight, and Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli held talks on Sunday with the Romanian counterpart Nicolae Ciucă in Cairo. Prime Minister Madbouli and Ciucă inaugurated the Egyptian-Romanian Business Forum. Egypt and Romania signed the Memorandum of Understanding, and the two top officials witnessed the agreements. Madbouli said that the Romanian companies working in Egypt exceed 100 in various fields of investment. The Prime Minister elaborated that Egypt must overcome the different challenges facing the Egyptian development program. The Romanian Prime Minister addressed the forum and lauded the Egyptian role in Africa, adding that Egypt is the first destination to support Romanian trade in the region. Welcome back. We will be having a telephone call with Ambassador Ahmed Haggag, the former Assistant Foreign Minister for the African Affairs, to be shedding more light on the main topic of the daily debate for tonight, the Egyptian-African relations and the shared unified vision regarding Egypt and the African continent for sustainability, development and cooperation. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the daily debate over the phone.
Thank you.
Anytime. First of all, we did see in the past week Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli attending the second Dakar Financial Summit for the development of the African infrastructure. What is the importance of such a summit, and what is the significance of Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli attending on behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi this important gathering?
This is not the first Dakar summit. A previous summit was held in 2014.
Yes.
And the problem of financing of infrastructure in Africa is not new. It is old. And the plans are laid down in different sectors, railroads, roads and telecommunication and so on. But the major problem is financing. That's why the title of the conference deals with the financing of such projects. The conference is sponsored by the OEU and NEPAD. I would like to say that NEPAD is an agency which tries to get finances for infrastructure projects in the African continent if it involves more than one African countries. That means if Egypt and Sudan agreed to build a road or a railroad between the two countries, this merits that NEPAD will search for finances for this infrastructure project. The project's finances in today's meeting, we don't expect too much from all the financing countries, like in Europe and the United States. Everybody is busy now with the ramification of the war between Russia and Ukraine.
Yes.
But two major financing agencies, the World Bank and the African Development Bank, are the big finances which we should go to finance such projects, which will help in promoting African economic integration in accordance with making Africa a free trade zone. This free trade zone was ushered during President Sisi chairmanship of the African Union, and it will allow the transfer of goods and services without any custom duties. In order to do that smoothly, we need efficient roads, railroads network, and so on. So the projects have been laid down by planners in different regions of Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, and Africa as a general.
Yes.
So we have to look for financing from China and Japan and the African Development Bank and the World Bank itself.
Yes. On the other hand, Mr. Ambassador, how do you see the expertise and the experience and the advice that Egypt could be lending to Africa in terms of the capabilities that we have here in the country and could be propagated and implemented once again in terms of developing the infrastructure for the whole of Africa, not just for Egypt?
I think the conference acknowledged that Egypt is a model for promoting and developing its own infrastructure in roads, railroads, rapid trains, and so on. And also Egyptian firms are working hard to accomplish major infrastructure in Africa, and notably the Nyerere Dam in Tanzania. It is working also in Nigeria and Uganda and in the Congo. Therefore, Egypt is ready to offer its experience in this regards, and I think the model which Egypt established in its own boundaries could be a reference, and also the work of Egyptian major companies which are working in Africa could also be an assistance in this regard. And I think Prime Minister Madbouli mentioned that there should be a mix of private sector with the public sector. The government cannot achieve everything without the assistance of the private sector, which is going to benefit from such an establishment of efficient infrastructure in Africa.
And do you think that there is real intent by the Egyptian private sector companies to be investing in Africa, to be dealing with the African partners in the upcoming short space of time?
Some of the majority of Egyptian companies who are working in Africa now are private sector.
Yes.
So this means that there is an attraction to invest in financing African infrastructure in the continent. But I think the government should do more in order to inform the private sector about the possible projects in the continent in order to alert them to make studies of those projects in time, and to look for finances by external finances or external investors in Africa. And the government should also make the possibility of attracting investors in projects in the African continent in order to use the possibility of the possibility of those investors investing projects will benefit from the abolishment of custom duties due to the African free trade zone.
How do you see the momentum acquired in general between the Egyptian-African relations and the bilateral ties between Egypt and Africa, especially under the tenure of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry in the past years?
I think President Sisi has embarked on an ambitious visit in African countries and vice versa. Many African heads of state to come to Egypt to have bilateral talks with the government and also with the private sector. The trade between Egypt and Africa is about $5,000-6,000 dollars. It could be hugely expanded if the Egyptian trade agency could explain to the private sector the possibility of their participation in financing and implementing such a project in Africa. So it is a choice between a mixture of a private and public sector in embarking of implementing such infrastructure in Africa, which is a necessity and a prerequisite measure if we are serious about the implementing of the project of making Africa a free trade zone.
Yes, of course, infrastructure is very important for the development of Egypt and Africa at the same time. But on the other hand, one of the initiatives launched by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the recent history is to be silencing the guns, to be eliminating terrorism in Africa, which is targeting security and stability of the African continent. How do you see the importance of launching such an important initiative in the whole of the continent, not just for Egypt?
Egypt is serious about eliminating the terrorist attacks, not only within its borders, which has managed to eradicate it, but also across African continent. That's why the police sector here in Egypt are making regular training program for African police in combating terrorist attacks. And I think they can deliver such experience also to the whole continent. And we have to cooperate with non-African countries in making inroads in this sector, because it is not only an African benefit, but also for external partners if they are serious in assisting Africa to develop on a sound basis. Terrorism is one of the major obstacles against the economic integration in Africa. You cannot transfer or send goods safely through roads or railroads if there are terrorist attacks in countries such as Nigeria and others, which are making enter African trade a possibility.
Yes, Ambassador Ahmed Haggag, the former Assistant Foreign Minister for the African Affairs, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate over the phone. We will be heading to the first report of the Daily Debate for tonight, and it comes through the visit of Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli to Dakar and the second Dakar Financing Summit for the development of infrastructure in Africa on behalf of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, speaking about the importance of the Julius Nyerere Dam that was built in Tanzania with Egyptian hands and expertise. We will be having more details in the upcoming report, so stay tuned.
Egypt's Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli attended the second Dakar Financing Summit for Africa's Infrastructure Development last week on behalf of President Fattah al-Sisi. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli said that Tanzania's huge development project, the Julius Nyerere hydroelectric power project that is being constructed by Egyptian and Tanzanian hands, is a model for cooperation between African countries in the field of development. Madbouli said that the JNHPP, whose inauguration ceremony for the filling of its reservoir was in December, highlights the capabilities and expertise accumulated by Egyptian companies in the field of infrastructure, stressing that Egypt stands ready to share all experiences with brotherly African countries. The Premier's remarks came during his speech on behalf of President Fattah al-Sisi at the second Dakar Financing Summit for Africa's Infrastructure Development, which was being held on Thursday and Friday in the Senegalese capital, Dakar. The construction of the $3 billion JNHPP was concluded in October 2022, nearly 3 years after its beginning. The JNHPP was established with the aim to double Tanzania's energy production, control floods, and improve agriculture. Madbouli also highlighted the importance of African countries sharing their experiences with each other. He pointed out to Egypt's pioneering development experience in the field of infrastructure over the past 8 years, highlighting that investments in Egypt in the field of infrastructure has amounted to nearly $170 billion. The Premier said that this did not only contribute to the development of the existing infrastructure network and building new cities that attract investments, but also to providing about 5 million job opportunities for Egyptian youth. He also called for exerting more efforts to mobilize financing for continental link projects within the framework of the Programme for Infrastructure Development in Africa's second priority action plan, including the Victoria Mediterranean Naval Linkage Project. Madbouli also tackled the role and responsibility of international partners and international financing institutions in bridging the financing gap in sustainable development projects and in reducing the debt burdens of the most affected countries, especially those developing countries whose debt rates have reached dangerous levels that exceed 250% of their revenues. The World Bank statistics indicate that the African continent needs approximately $100 million annually to bridge the financing gap associated with infrastructure projects. In this context, he emphasized the importance of activating the African continent's initiative to obtain a seat in the G20 economic group, as this would represent an opportunity for the voice of African countries to be heard and for the formulation of policies more consistent with reality. Madbouli also highlighted the significance of benefiting from the African Continental Free Trade Area, which entered into force in 2019 during Egypt's presidency of the African Union, pointing out that the benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement cannot be reaped without large investments that achieve continental connectivity. The Premier added that Egypt attaches great importance to this issue in light of its current presidency of the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa.